right? And where we left off in the previous class, we were discussing some of the basic postulates of how we obtained a scientific rigor to criticism or to approaching a text, a work of art in general, a text in particular. We saw this in the previous class. I hope you must have done some good reading on these major schools of the 20th century, especially formalism in Russia. Then we have structuralism in France, practical criticism in the United States, practical criticism in England, and new criticism in the United States. This is how it all began. I told you about the four broad divisions of theories that M.H. Abrams talks about, right? From the mimetic, the pragmatic, the expressive, till up until the 20th century, when we had what is called the objective turn or the linguistic turn, right, to approaching a text. So we will continue. Any theory or any criticism, any school or movement will always be a reaction to the previous school. Please have this in mind. Any theory, any school, or any movement, or any style will always be a reaction against the previous school. And that's one reason why we have them prescribed. If they are completely following the same good old tradition, we wouldn't be having them in our syllabus. Like, for example, Plato had a different approach to reality. Then Aristotle begged to differ. Then you have, every philosopher or every school. So, what is a school? What is a movement? You should have an idea of what a school and a movement is all about. A school, that you must have studied a host of schools in literary theory and criticism, isn't it? The practical school of criticism, the new criticism school, the Chicago school, the Aristotelian school, the school of Plato. So, what is a school? What is a movement? What is style? What is technique? I'll just give you an outline. Right? These are the initial days, so you should have an idea before we plunge headlong into uh, our text. So, what is a school? A school, just admit someone wants to join the call. Yeah. A school is something that is initiated by one pioneer. It would be a person usually. It would be a person normally. One pioneer. But in the Elizabethan age, you had three pioneers from three different vistas or genres. Right? Lilly, Spencer, Sidney. They were called pioneers. Who is a pioneer? Who is a trendsetter? Yesterday in my second MA class, I was discussing something about what is creativity in the context of a book called The Creativity Code by Marcus du Sautoy. You know what he says? Something new, something surprising, and something that has value. I repeat, what is creativity? Coming up with something new, something surprising. Till date, nobody else has already known something about this. You come up with something new. That is creativity in the arts. And what's the third one? Something that has value. This is very important. Remember, when we were talking about research, I told you research is something that contributes something new to the already existing body of knowledge. I also told you the second point of good research. What is research? Research makes a difference. Now connected to creativity. So if I call you a creative being, a creative person, that means you have come up with something new in the sense, something original, something that is surprisingly new, and then something that is valuable. This is the third point. I would like to connect with the concept of a school. What is something of value? When do you call something as having great value? When, for example, someone else or somebody else adopts your ideas, Your thoughts. Hey, wow, this is amazing. This is interesting. When we get some wonderful messages on WhatsApp, we won't be forwarding all the WhatsApp messages that we get. We won't be sharing all the videos that we get. Although they might be new and surprising, they should have value in them, content. Only then we will like to share it with others, forward it to others. When someone else adopts or adapts to this new methodology, only then it is supposed to have value, says Marcus du Satoy. He wrote in 2019 a wonderful book called The Creativity Code. Creativity Code. You may read that book at leisure after you log out. So something that has value. A school is something that is pioneered by one person and something that has value. Something that others from another generation, subsequent generations also try to imbibe or emulate or imitate. That is called a school. And especially, one thing we should remember here is a school is always connected to the concept of style. What is style? M.H. Abrams, in his beautiful book, he all discussed glossary of literary terms. This one book, I think, will help solve your UGC net JRF problems at least to 30% because it contains almost all literary terms that one needs for your entire life. Exhaustive compendium or repertoire of literary terms that you could possibly need in life. It's amazing. Right? So you please have a copy, hard copy of this book, glossary, where he defines style in a beautiful way. M.H. Abrams. What does he say about style? He says a style means this. How they say what they say. Beautiful, isn't it? How they say what they say. So, for example, in society, you find if you are regular to the movies, right, if you've been watching films, especially in South India, you would have found Rajnikant is celebrated as a sensation event. Why? Because of the fact that there is not a style policy. Number one, it's a style policy. Number one, it's a style. But we go for style. That is one reason why it's a simple. The simple expression, I love you. If you ask Rajnikant, the way he says it, completely different. It's not the way that everyone else is. When the lead male character has to propose to the lead male character, like the hero or proposing to the heroine. The way he does it, one of his movies in the 1990s that I still remember, he will never directly, come and propose to her. He will just throw a rose like this, right, like this from his hand, and she'll be standing behind a tree. She'll be a bit shy to look at him, so she'll be standing behind a tree. You'll uh, throw a rose like this, and what will happen is, in its own inimitable style, it will swish up like that, and then before it lands on her hands, what he would say? He will not even look at her. He will look at another direction and say, "Catch it!" like this. Catch it. That's it. And she has to catch it. Then he would say, எனக்கு உன்னை ரொம்ப பிடிச்சிருக்கு. I love you a lot. See his style. So what is style? How they say what they say. Okay? So what is not important? What they say is not important. Almost all novels in the world have the same plot structure. Almost every novel you'll find, definitely in every novel you'll find a crisis, a quest. A crisis will definitely be there. Then how they resolve the crisis, right, forms the denouement. Definitely there will be a crisis. So a novel will always lead towards a crisis. A short story will always lead towards a crisis. A play will always lead towards what? A crisis. A difficult situation. how the lead male character and the lead female character deal with this crisis forms the rest and the crux of the story. So, what is style? How they say it. How they say what? What they say. In simply put, style is different from substance. Matthew Arnold says, no, style, and he talks about the grand style, the touchstone method, the grand style. Style is different from substance, or manner is different from matter. So a school will be inspired by the style of a particular writer and try to imitate or follow his or her style. The Shakespearean school, the New Critical school, the school of Aristotle, they will follow the same style, the methodology, the techniques with their master, their guru. Similarly, practical criticism is a school because it had a guru, it had a master figure. Ivor Armstrong Richards, I.A. Richards. So, what is a movement? A movement differs from a style because it differs from a school because a school is usually placed in a particular location. It is rooted in a particular location. I told you, the practical criticism school, they were rooted or grounded in England. The new criticism school, they were rooted in the United States, the American South. The formalist school, they were rooted or grounded in Russia, basically. Similarly, a school is always rooted in a particular place. But a movement need not necessarily be rooted or grounded or fixed to a particular place, a locale. The Romantic movement, Wordsworth belongs to the Romantic movement. At the same time, there are also people from India in the 20th century, Toruda, Sarojini Naidu, a whole lot of romantics who followed the romantic movement. Lightly, oh, lightly we bear her along. She sways like a flower in the rhythm of her song. Right? The romantic school or the romantic movement. Now you know the difference between school and movement. If it is the romantic school, that means it is in a particular place. If it is a romantic movement, it means it is spread all over the world. The influence is basically the romantics. Now, in the 20th century, you had, I told you, we had different schools, movements based on style and technique. And every school was a reaction to the previous school that came before it. Every movement was a reaction to the previous movement that came before it. And what did these schools or movements do? Very simple. They heightened or enlarged our perspective to a text. In other words, they widened our perspective to reality. To reality. Reality is not to be blinkered. You'll find the horses, they have blinkers on them. Reality is not to be blinkered or tinkered or jaundiced or prejudiced to one particular perspective. Reality has different perspectives to it. There is a lizard, for example, in this hall, in this first MA class, there is a lizard. From the lizard's point of view, from the lizard's perspective, from the lizard's eyes, this room will look completely different. This won't mean anything. This won't mean anything. The lizard need not wear a mask. Reality is completely different. To the schoolboy, this classroom will never make sense at the higher education level. Hey, what is this? What is this Anna and Akka doing? It won't make sense for them. Reality, we had in Cellular Hall, when our classes were held in Cellular Hall for the English department for many decades, we used to have a little dog called Jane. Because I taught Jane Iyer there in the particular indoor class. The students were very fond of this little dog, so they called her Jane. I told them one day in class, have you ever seen this class through the eyes of little Jane? No, there were a whole lot of fans for Jane in class because we were in Salu Hall. They used to bring food from the dining hall for Jane, and day scholars used to bring biscuits and other eats for this for their Jane. Every day, any teacher takes class there in the indoor hall. Uh, Jane will be lying there, just in the middle of the hall, and listening. So, I asked them, have you ever looked at this classroom through Jane's perspective? So, reality is not the same. Reality differs from person to animal, animal to bird, bird to flora, flora to fauna, everything. So every theory gives us eco-criticism, gives us a completely different perspective to reality. The only proactive theory, all other theories, we call them reactive. Eco-criticism is the only theory we call it proactive because it doesn't wound or hurt any other theory that came before. It talks about interconnectedness, a cosmic interconnectedness. I and you and we are part of an interconnected grand cosmos. So the concept of ego is replaced by the concept of eco. We all know that very famous slogan. Right? I is replaced with we, community. A reaction to the previous school, I said. So in the 20th century, there was an excess of romanticism, excess of what is called, they call it romantic excesses. So in the 20th century, in Russia, a group of critics, they came together in 1830s. Dmitry Pisarev, Pisareve, Dmitry Pisarev. You may after you log out also, you may check out on him. He was one of the pioneering revolters. He was dead against poets of the period who were slavishly hobnobbing or eulogizing or praising the establishment. Most of them were pro-establishment. They were always, so what is the purpose of art? Is the purpose of art only to sing the praises of the king or the queen or the czars in Russia? Doesn't art have any other purpose? He was fed up. After 2 years of doing history and philology at the University of St. Petersburg in Russia, you know what he said? He gave a very scathing remark. He said, I would have got more information by reading the newspapers for these past 2 years than doing this course in history and philology, he said. To him, an apple, an apple as an art will have only aesthetic value. He's not worried about the aesthetic value or other things. He said, I would rather prefer an apple that I can eat. See the social function of art. Just don't eulogize or flatter art for art's sake alone. He said art should also have another function, the utilitarian function, social function. For this, he needed the autonomy for a work of art. What is autonomy for a work of art? He also gave, another very shocking remark. He said, I would rather be a shoemaker in Russia than be an artist in Russia. Because at least a shoemaker will produce shoes that have some utility to them. Desire, some utility to them. While art was slavish propaganda, like the chamchas, no utility on them. Then Vladimir Nabokov, and a whole lot of others came up. Nabokov was also against the concept of values. Why do you want art to always have values or morals to them? He asked. In 1917, I'm just fast forwarding because the next class we'll deal with that Ian Watt's essay, uh, the first essay that has been prescribed for you. Right? I'm summarizing the essay because it's a huge essay from page 35 to page 60. So I'm in the process of summarizing in the sense, like trying to make it short because we have just 10 hours for that essay. So devoted for these two essays. So I'll be trying to summarize it, make it short, and passing it on to a class representative, who in turn will be giving it to you. You should read, right? Because it's all about the rise of the reading public, right? And the novel. So you should do some homework on reading also. So I'll fast forward 1917, Victor Shklovsky. You can make a note of the title of this essay, right? Art as technique. Remember in the previous class I told you about technical devices, a scientific rigor to literature. Now, art as technique. Art, another translation of this essay is art as device. Remember, we use the term literary devices, like a medical surgeon uses surgical devices, a literary surgeon uses literary devices. So we have art as device. This is another English translation, 1917, or art as technique, another translation into English from Russian. So, what is this essay all about? Here he talks about the concept of defamiliarization. You can make a note of this term, defamiliarization, right? Because this term will be recurring over and over again. What is defamiliarization? Simply put, making strange. Making strange. Why do you want to make it strange? So that you'll get an enhanced engagement with the text. Right? Making strange. This is what defamiliarization is all about. Making strange. Now, why did he have to do that? I'll give you two words: habituated actions or habituated ways of seeing. For example, uh, your home. There are four walls in your room. In your home, there are steps that lead up to your home, your house. Have you ever counted the steps that lead up to your house? Have you ever counted the grills that make up your window? Have you ever known the measurement of your kitchen? Have you ever seen the tiles in your washroom? Appreciated the manner in which they are made? Have you ever asked your dad what was his favorite subject? Have you ever asked your mom, or have you ever asked your siblings what is their favorite food, their favorite subject, when their favorite sport or game? We normally don't do that. You know why? Because familiarity breeds content. Familiarity breeds content. So we normally take these things for granted. MCC. After 4 years of being in MCC, in the fifth year, I was asking my students, right, in the second MA class, do you know something right in front of Miller's statue that shows you the time? I asked them. They were surprised. Most of them didn't know. Like this was years ago, right, when we had our real-time classes, not the virtual classes. Have you ever seen something that shows us time that is not the regular analog or digital clocks, but something that connects with nature, with the sun that shows us the time? It's been there since time immemorial. Not many knew about it. That's because IMCC is associated with the trees, the beautiful landscape, that's it. But there are other peculiarities to the Madras Christian College. Because of the familiarity, I have completely sidelined and ignored it. That is one reason why Victor Shklovsky talks about defamiliarization or art as technique. Another playwright you all must have known, Bertolt Brecht. He also talks about a similar term, alienation effect. What is alienation effect? Again, something connected with the defamiliarization. Alienation means disconnecting yourself from the situation and looking at it from an aesthetic distance. He was a playwright, we all know, and when he staged his plays, he wanted to prove a point how we are mesmerized by the situation that we are watching. So once he asked his wife, who was also co-partner in the direction of his plays, you know what he told her? My dear wife, see, I'm going to stage a play this morning. Everyone in the audience will be glued to the screen, to the stage. They'll all be in rapt attention watching the play, and there will be a very moving, intimate, moving scene that comes up, a very emotional scene that comes up. And everyone will start crying. They'll become emotional. Tears will pop up out of their eyes, and then they will start almost choking and then crying. That is the time when I want you to turn on the lights. Right? Catherine Belsey tells us, no, in the theater, when the lights are switched off, our eyes awaken to another reality. The moment the reality, our reality is switched off, the light switching off signifies our reality, right? Switching off, and then the reality of the screen or the stage taking over. Now we say switch on the lights or turn on the lights. So she agreed. Okay, my dear husband, I'll do that. The moving scene came, the emotional scene came, and he was looking around for his wife to turn on the lights. But to his shock, he found his wife was also crying, along with the audience, the members of the audience, the spectators. Now, what was he trying to prove through this alienation effect, this aesthetic distancing? The fact that a work of art should be taken away from its context to look at the politics behind the emotions. 1997, when I was doing my undergraduation, like second year, UG, Titanic came, if I'm right, right? Titanic, the movie was, a few of us went to the theaters to watch this movie because we were so enamored by the whole lot of good reviews that came up. So even the theater was, the cinema hall gave us the desired effect. All those Dolby, DTS, whatever, right? To compare itself to the ice cold situation. So here also you had a very chilling effect. Then you all know the story of the movie, where Jack and Rose are there. Jack finally dies and he's floating on a bog, and Rose is also there. And so what happens is there comes a time when you know she has to let go because he's dead. So that moment, a very emotional, a sentimental moment. So when we all came out, all of us, including so wow, wonderful, sentimental movie, very emotional movie. A whole lot of other scenes are also there that connect to these emotions. This is where Bertolt Brecht comes up and says, "You guys, all of you, when you watch this movie, you cry, tears roll down your eyes. But the moment you step out into your real reality, the reality that we are a part of, not the reality of the screen or the stage, there will be a beggar in torn clothes who has not had her food for days in a row, skeleton structure. She'll be asking you for 5 rupees. Amma, give me 5 rupees. It's a long time since I had my food. You will never be least bothered about this woman or this man outside the cinema theater. Now, this is where the alienation effect comes into play. Now you understand why these emotions are artificial emotions. Then he tells them, for example, I'm just telling you, you know how much Jack was paid for playing this role in this wonderful movie? He was paid hundreds of crores for acting it out in this movie. You know how much Rose or Kate Winslet was paid to act out this role, and you cry for something that doesn't give tears. You shed your tears, but in reality, your own kith and kin who's out there languishing in the street who wants his day or her day dose of bread. Now you understand the function of arts perspectives. Defamiliarization, he talks about this particular effect of making strange. Habituated actions are seen in a new light. Why? So that we will appreciate them better. This is the Russian school. In New Criticism School, I'll just give you the Practical Criticism School in England. I'll just give you a quick outline before we wind up for the day. Do we have the time? Yes. Before that, there are two announcements I have. One is some of you had asked me about the event that's happening, not event, it's event, right? The symposium that's happening on 22nd, conducted by the Department of English, Queen Mary's College. We'll also be having a Luminar lecture series on November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Eminent speakers will be there on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd to give us talks on very interesting topics. Right? So I want you all not only to listen, not only to take notes. If you have a blog, you can also transcribe those notes and put them there. Not only that, you should ask questions. You can ask questions to me. You can ask questions to the speakers. Right? You should interact. The moment you ask a question, you become a student. Till then, you are just a registered participant of a class. So this is happening on the 22nd. Since I am not able to reply to everyone personally, I'm just announcing this in class on the 22nd. Writers in Exile is the theme. If you know about any writer living in exile, exilic discourse, we call them, who has written something of value. So, you know, exilic literature, no? Writers in exile. It's a beautiful theme and a wonderful term, an intense term, a poignant term. If you are interested in any of these writers, you may try presenting a paper in about 5 minutes or 7 minutes that you do. You can also even have any work or any poem. Take just a poem that you do. One or two poems you do. That brings out the angst, the agony of being in exile. In Imaginary Homelands, a collection of essays by Salman Rushdie, he gives a beautiful line that I repeat very often. You know what he says? What does it mean to be an Indian outside of India? What does it mean to be an Indian outside of India? For example, if we are all, just imagine we are all living now in America. How will we look at our motherland from here, from America, from our motherland, thousands of miles away from where we presently live? The feeling is different, isn't it? African Americans who were sold as slave workers, indentured laborers. What were their songs? You can even analyze one of their songs. Well, what's that? Buffalo Soldier. We all know this wonderful folk song. It's a reggae. A buffalo soldier stolen from Africa, brought to America. We all sing that song as if it's a very peppy number, but no, it has a lot of agony to it. Like buffalo soldier stolen from Africa, brought to America, fighting on arrival, fighting for survival. There are songs and songs that bring out this agony and angst of such people who are being forcefully taken away or uprooted from the place. Writers in exile, writers, right, who have talked about this concept of being in exile. From here, they will look at their homeland with longing, with nostalgia. There is a beautiful Bonium song, no? By the rivers of Babylon. There we sat down, we wept when we remembered our homeland. What is my homeland? My homeland is far away, Zion. So whenever I am here in captivity, Babylon is a land of captivity. So I don't feel free here. I'm not able to connect with people here. I'm rootless here. My roots are elsewhere. Country roads take me home to the place I belong. Right? I want a few of you who are interested to present. Right, start right now itself. Right? Present just for 5 minutes on this topic. Right? And from the next class, that is after Puja holidays, in the alphabetical order, every day I want two of you to talk about, in that attendance order, alphabetical order in your attendance. Right? I will be passing it on to your classmates, to your class representative. You'll have to talk about a book that you have read that nobody else knows, right? In the alphabetical order, you have to tell me, sir, this is one book, not a famous writer, not a popular writer, not an eminent writer, a writer who you think needs to be celebrated. Any writer under the sun. A writer whom you think should be celebrated, but has not been celebrated. Sir, I read this writer. She's amazing. She's awesome. I think the world needs to know about them. So I would like to talk. How many lines? Just 5 lines. Why do you like this writer? What is special about that text or their work, their novel, their short stories? I read this particular short story or this particular author. Why do you like them? Right? Just two per day would do. Right? Every class we'll have such new writers being celebrated in every class of us. Right? And I'll be monitoring. Right? In the sense, I'll be recording. Right? Whatever you say, so that others also come to know about these writers. Right? Literature is basically a celebration of life in all its grandeur. Not necessarily Shakespeare or Milton alone. They've always already been celebrated. We need to celebrate other eyes and other voices from all across. Perumal Murugan, yes, 10 years ago he was not celebrated, now he is celebrated. But there are other writers, even from the region, from Kerala, from Karnataka, from Andhra, from Gujarat, from Tamil Nadu, from Assam, Andamans, Meghalaya, all these places. There are writers waiting to be celebrated. You can talk about them, right? One writer, 5 sentences to do, not more than that. 5 to 6 sentences quickly, right? Uh, that is one. Secondly, please read at least two English newspapers and two vernacular newspapers every day. See, today's newspaper, I found a wonderful article. Especially the Indian Express gives a lot of importance to literature in the editorial page. So I just this today's newspaper, right? Fables and a search for the duck in South Indian art. Look at this article in the editorial page. He's a professor, associate professor in art history and aesthetics, Srinivas Sisla, right? So please read these editorials. They will teach you the art of structuring a beautiful essay. How to structure an essay, how to write an essay. Like every day in the morning, you can also share it with me. Sir, I read this particular editorial from the Indian Express, from the Times of India, from the Hindu, from the Deccan Chronicle. There are 5 English dailies in Chennai. You should do that. Right. Um, this is the second one, right? And the third one is regards your assignments. I think we'll discuss that in the next class. It's time. That's all for now. If there are any doubts or suggestions or questions, you may ask me now. Otherwise, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
Thank you.